Welcome back, mi amigos, to Video Ferox and the Summer of Santo. Tonight, the one and only El Santo has to face the vengeance of the crying woman. Will Santo prevail? Can Santo prevail? Let's find out. Alrighty, and that was the trailer to Vengeance of the Crying Woman. Actually, no, it's not the trailer of the Vengeance of the Crying Woman because I don't know what I'm going to use in there, but the trailer for this movie does not exist as near as I can tell. So, Jeff, did you like Vengeance of the Crying Woman?
You know, kinda. This is probably the most on the fence I am of any Santo movie. And there are things I liked about it. Absolutely. Don't get me wrong. It's a Santo movie. It's a lot of fun. But it just, I feel it was certainly the weakest of the ones I've seen. And there are various reasons for that we'll get into in the spoiler section, but it's fun. It can still be an enjoyable watch. A lot of the Santo stuff itself is actually very fun. And, so I'm going to go, yeah. But it's not as strong as endorsement as the other movies we've watched in this series.
For the first 30 or 45 minutes, until Llorona shows up in her kind of human form, the movie kind of wobbles and doesn't really find its footing. Mm-hmm. But when she shows up in human form and it takes off, then yes, it's actually, it's fun at that point.
Yeah.
So I recommend it with a big old asterisk.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am.
Well, why don't we just get on to the spoilers then?
Because that's really all there is to talk about now.
Yeah, really. So, spoilers ahoy. So this outing, we don't get Blue Demon, but Santo has a sidekick. And I'm going to completely fuck up the way his name's pronounced. It's Machinilla Naples.
I think the Machinella part is a nickname because even on the posters they list him as Jose. And so I think I'll just be referring to him as either Jose or Naples, just to not trip over his name. I did find from a little research that much like Blue Demon, he is a legitimate sports figure. He is a Cuban boxer.
And apparently had a really long career with like several title bouts and he held the title several times.
Yeah.
Now, admittedly, okay, we, if you haven't noticed by now, are reasonably large wrestling nerds. Mm-hmm. Boxing outside of the Rocky movies is not my thing.
Watching this movie, there's a part of me wondering, was this written as a Santo and Blue Demon movie and Blue Demon wasn't available?
It might have been, because really it could be just a palette swap.
Yeah.
For all the character development that you. Okay, what am I talking about? It's a Santo movie. There is no character development.
No characters grow, no characters learn. So it's a Santo movie. What are we here for? Santo fights a villain, only in this case, kind of.
Kind of.
Like I said, it's the weirdest of the Santo in that they never encounter each other. But like you said, what is Santo going to do? Suplex La Llorona? On the other hand, I found Naples a very engaging sidekick. He was a lot of fun because he was having a lot of fun. The thing I loved with him, his entire through line in the movie, is he actually wants to see La Llorona. He wants to see a spirit. He wants to have a supernatural experience. He believes in ghosts, but he's never seen one. And all he wants is to see La Llorona, which you realize at the end, he completely fails that. He never encounters her.
And actually, we probably should set up La Llorona a little bit.
If you grew up in Mexico, you heard the story of La Llorona. She was the regional boogeyman.
She was this countess that had a lover, and the lover was cheating on her. So to get back with the lover, she went and killed her 4 sons. And then realized what a monster she was, and then she would wander the land.
Extracting revenge or trying to find children to replace her sons that it never ended well for.
Right.
And La Llorona, or the crying woman, because she's crying for her children.
The backstory we get is that she was trying to frame her lover he had like this shipment of gold that he was going to send off to the King of Spain. Mm-hmm. And so she hijacked the gold, hid the gold somewhere in like a crypt, and then tried to frame her lover by murdering the kids and then her taking her own life. Mm-hmm. Now what happened was that he managed to get off scot-free. And so he went to have a long and successful and productive life and lots of kids. And so the La Llorona of the movie is in fact going around and getting the descendants as they're going and killing them.
Right.
And into this madness comes Santo.
Now this is another movie that when we first see him in a wrestling match, they put the ring in a studio and had Santo have a match with piped-in crowd sound and an announcer who doesn't know what wrestling moves actually are.
However, there's one reason I really don't like the matches in this movie is because what happens is that you have the ring in this bluish void, but then they would occasionally cut to Jose or Santo sitting on a couch watching the match on a TV. So they shrink the frame down to this big and they show the match. And the energy and the pacing and the editing, just not very good.
You're right. Now, when Santo gets drawn in, he, as often happens in a Santo movie, there's a kindly professor. And this kindly professor brings Santo in because he feels he's discovered where the crypt of La Llorona is, and that on her is a medallion that will have a map to the 100,000 doubloons
that was stolen from her lover.
Right. And at first Santo's like, I am not a grave robber. I'm not interested. And then the professor says, no, I want to give all the money to the Children in Need Fund, which of course brings Santo, oh wait, did you say helping children? And what turns out is he is a descendant of La Llorona's lover. He wants to break the curse of La Llorona, and since she had a pact with the devil, and this is literally, she signs a contract in blood, there is a witchy woman that we assume is an emissary of Satan.
Or, Satan, can be a chick if he wants to be.
Could be Satan himself, absolutely. But that if they take the gold she stole and give it to charity, the goodness of that act would nullify the pact with Satan and put La Llorona to rest. So these characters are all introduced. The nieces want to go along with them for the exploration of the tomb and are told, no, it's too dangerous. And as is standard in a movie like this, they completely ignore that. On top of this...
Oh yes, we haven't mentioned the bad guys yet. Because Santo, being a consummate gentleman, isn't going to go punch a woman, even if the woman is 300 years old dead. So we have the most interesting man in the world. Quite literally, it's a Spanish interesting man in the world. And he's got this great goatee, and he's this suave son of a bitch.
I literally looked at him and went, "You, sir, are an evil genius." I recognize evil geniuses because
Game recognizes game.
I play one on my VTubing streams. You are an evil genius, and these are your henchmen, including he's got one henchman with a scar that goes over his eye that is the worst makeup job for a scar. And this guy, I was like, so evil Mr. Monopoly is working for the most interesting man in the world. Because that's what he looked like to me, evil Mr. Monopoly, especially with the scar. And so the evil genius has got his henchmen, and all they know is this professor has a line on this treasure. We want the treasure. So we're going to let them go find it, then we're going to attack them and steal the stuff from them so we get the treasure. As an evil plot goes, pretty solid.
Pretty solid. And an interesting bit of continuity between the movies, because now you could just chalk this up to the same director using the same cast, because that's what you do in these sort of things. Mm-hmm. But the director of this one also did the Dracula versus the Wolfman, and the thugs here are the same ones.
One of them was like, you were the guy I couldn't tell if you were a werewolf without makeup or just a vampire with a weird beard. They absolutely were. You're the same thugs. I almost was like, this is a prequel, and these guys are going to go on to being bitten by Dracula and put under his thrall.
There's even a line where the guy with the scar tells Santo, it's like, you were messing with my affairs last time, so I'm going to kill you. So my headcanon is that all three of these movies are a trilogy. Prove me wrong.
Sure, why not? Of course, because they're in the lead, Santo and Party get there first. And my first comment was when I watched this, and I put this on my Twitch stream, and my audience was like, what's so good they wore their grave robbing sweaters.
But the beautiful thing is, all of the rocks that they have to uncover to get to La Llorona's tomb, they're just the styrofoam. I mean, Doctor Who would be like, dude, buy some fucking 2x4s and put your setup better. You pick it up and you can see the set wobbling, and they're clearly struggling with rocks.
They get into the tomb, and now remember, Santo, Naples, and the professor do not know the nieces have followed them in.
Right.
The Santo party finds the casket of La Llorona, open it, and this is where I could not resist, being an old school horror fan, going, Pamela Voorhees? Because her makeup is very reminiscent of the head of Pamela Voorhees from Friday the 13th Part 2.
For an extremely low-budget movie, the makeup for La Llorona looks pretty good.
Honestly, yeah. No, I mean, it would stand up to that Friday the 13th makeup.
Particularly around the eyes. The makeup right around the eyes on the close-ups, really good stuff.
Now, this is probably the closest we get to Santo and Naples meeting La Llorona. They see her body, and it's in bandages, and they find the medallion. Great, we now have the medallion, and yes, it has a map, but I'm going to have to decipher it, says the professor. And then they leave. At this point, we finally get a confrontation between Santo, Naples, and the bad guys. And our first real fight scene ensues.
That isn't a wrestling match, because we opened the movie with a wrestling match.
Right, and a boxing match earlier.
And a boxing match, yeah.
So now our plot's in motion. The thugs have had their first attempt of going up against Santo and Naples, gotten their asses kicked. The professor has the medallion, and La Llorona is loose in the world.
And this is where the movie starts to pick up. It's been a lot of exposition and wandering up and down the corridors here. Mm-hmm. But once the medallion's out and La Llorona is on the move, it starts picking up.
Yeah.
And so what happens is the professor, he has the back of the medallion, he's like doing the transcription and trying to figure out where the map is and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So he's got all his notes. And that's when, oh no, a swerve happens, and his assistant, all this time, says, hey, I'm just going to take this and go to the most interesting man in the world and give him the stuff.
And the professor can't recreate anything because,
doesn't have a medallion.
La Llorona shows up, mm-hmm. and he's her first victim. So now you've got the struggle of he's dead, the medallion's gone, La Llorona's on the loose. So Santo and Naples are going to go chase down the thugs.
But the problem is, of course, with the thugs is the assistant, the backstabbing assistant, it's like, here's your stuff. Great. Here, let me pay you. Pow. And they kill him. And then the most interesting man in the world is like, okay, we kind of needed the doctor to decipher the notes, you idiot. Why did you kill him?
We now encounter La Llorona in her human form, where she's taken up shop in the neighboring mansion.
The old spooky house that's next door that
Right.
every villa in the world seems to have next door.
And she's interested in getting to know the children. Replace her children / complete the curse. And so we set up that, but she can't go after the boy because he wears a very prominent crucifix. We completely forgot a scene we got to go back to.
All right.
The first encounter with La Llorona, she comes in her evil form, but because the professor is concerned that La Llorona might attack the grandson, Santo and Naples decide, well, we'll sit up and watch him. And he's asleep, and he wakes up, and there is Santo and Naples in his bedroom, and he's a huge fan of both of them. And he assumes he's dreaming, but he convinces them to go outside and have a match to see which one is tougher.
And the two of them are like, well, we're good guys. We're not going to fight each other. And it's like, well, just do it for pretend or whatever. Now, my issue with that scene is that not necessarily that it's padding or anything like that, because, I mean, it's a Santo movie. 25% of the movie is going to be padding. It's that if you're going to have a face-on-face fight, you need to, let's actually see them do their stuff. Here, it's just kind of them tussling and maybe, Santo gets him in a headlock. But
Humoring the kid.
Yeah, it's humoring the kid. I wish they had actually gone for the gusto, or at least more gusto than they would have.
Yeah. Kid gets tranced by the fog. It's the best I can. La Llorona's powers draw him in, but she can't touch him again because of the crucifix.
While the fog is entrancing the kid, and while Santo and Naples are in fact wrestling on the lawn, the bad guys are trying to figure out what the hell they're going to do. And they say, well, we have to get Santo and Naples out of the way. So they send some goons to ambush them in the alley. Mm-hmm. And, okay, you have a boxer and a luchador, and you've got presumably guns because you're bad guys. Why in hell are you walking up to engage them in fisticuffs?
Especially because you were already willing to shoot La Llorona.
Exactly. And then, okay, now this one I have to, you kind of have to buy into the kayfabe here a little bit, but wrestling moves in real life generally take the cooperation of both parties, the person attacking and the person actually executing the maneuver, right?
Right.
So why in the hell are the goons helping Santo to complete his wrestling move?
Yeah, that great head scissors takedown he does, where he grabs one by the head, one other by the head, one with his arms, one with his legs, and then does a flip over, which is a signature Santo move.
Exactly.
But they have to hold him up while he does that move.
Or he gets up he climbs like he's climbing a fence, and I'm like, wait a minute, Santo's running away? No. He's just climbing for a high spot, and he jumps on the guy. It's like, why are you letting Santo climb the ropes? No, just, well, whatever.
The most interesting man in Mexico gets everything. He gets the medallion. He's got the maps. He's still trying to get them deciphered. And Santo and Naples go, okay, we have to go get these. We're going to have to go fight them. Well, there's a lot of them. How are we going to do with it? But let's not forget, Santo is Batman.
Exactly.
Santo has knockout gas. So they're going to go to the evil lair, which is basically a warehouse. They're going to trick a bunch of the thugs to come to specific spots together and throw knockout gas at them. And they do this by going in to the warehouse and purposefully making as much noise as possible.
So where the Dracula and the Wolfman versus Santo was actually a whole bunch of really clever people, this one they're dumb as a sack of hammers because they're like, well, wait a minute, we hear some noise in the warehouse. Why don't we go get more men? Fight, Santo, no. Basically,
they do get them in like to different groupings and throw knockout gas at them and knock them out. Which the whole time, the most interesting man in Mexico is watching this all over closed circuit TV. He's got devices with blinking lights behind him. His supervillain game is strong.
And then he plays Santo by saying, well, here, take the map, take the notes, please enjoy. And it's like, well, you're a bad guy. We're going to arrest you. It's like, what evidence do you have? You came here and attacked me.
You attacked me and my men. I have it on video. So it's like, oh, he has outsmarted us. We cannot arrest him now because it looks like we're the criminals. So they take the map, figure out where it's leading them, and go to the old crypt that is where La Llorona hid the doubloons. It's central casting haunted house with cobwebs, suits of armor, random things around. And again, we are going on our second tomb robbing expedition with no tools. Santo's in another sporty cardigan, and Naples is in this purple.
It's almost like, Carl Douglas, the guy, everybody's kung fu fighting guy, that kind of jumpsuit he has. But it's not exactly a jumpsuit, it's this nice leisure wear.
It's almost like he's one of the singers in Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Exactly.
I expect him to break out in September at any moment. And they go into the crypt, and the thugs follow them. Now, parallel to this, La Llorona has convinced the little boy to come over to her house because she has some old toys of her son's that she's going to give him.
I'll trade you all these toys for that cross.
Go in the house, there are legitimately a lot of toys. It's like, oh, so La Llorona, where did you get these toys? Did you rob a toy store? Did you mug somebody for money? And so he does agree to take off the cross, and she grabs him and takes him to the cellar. Meanwhile, his precocious little sister has followed him into the house, sees his... Basically, she also gets captured by La Llorona. And so the children are taken into the basement and locked in there, because La Llorona says, after dark, I will come for you when my master can fully view it, because apparently Satan can only come out at night.
I didn't know.
And all through these, with all these attacks and everything, the spooky, witchy, probably the devil woman is just around.
She doesn't actually do anything satanic. The only thing she does to move the story forward is to tempt La Llorona, 300 years ago.
Yeah. And then she's just sort of there with, a really good eyebrow game. I will say that. Her spooky makeup on point. She would look great in a goth club. So Santo and Naples get into the crypt, have to grab stuff from around the crypt to break it open because they didn't bring tools.
Boy, if only they had a crowbar or something.
They find the treasure, but then the mooks attack again, and it's done in pure video game wave fashion. They get the treasure out into the next room. Mooks attack. Fight the mooks.
Get into the next room and they come down the stairs at them.
Yeah, more mooks. And then it becomes a race for time because all of a sudden, back where the kids are, the doors burst open, and you hear La Llorona crying for her children, and there she is in all her ghostly glory, coming slowly after the children. And you have Santo and Naples with the executives of the charity. And the moment that the executive from the charity gives Santo a receipt for the doubloons,
poof, the curse is broken.
She's gone. She turns into a skeleton, then vanishes, and happy ever after.
The only time that Naples and Santo ever encountered La Llorona is when they're leaving the crypt initially, and she's starting to wake up. And Naples is the last one out of the cave, and she turns her head a little bit, and he spots it and kind of does that Shaggy and Scooby freak out thing. But that's the extent of the encounter that they have.
Yeah, basically. The other thing that really annoys me is after they give the treasure, after that last encounter, we never see the most interesting man in Mexico again.
He gets away scot-free. And presumably his thugs at the warehouse, we never really get much resolution on them. Mm-hmm. So the bad guys just skate on by.
Yeah.
The other weirdly perplexing thing that the movie does, so here is the ghost starting to pick off people here and there, and Santo's like, well, we've got all this data, why don't we go talk to the cops? And the professor's like, no, they'll never believe us. It's like, motherfucker, Santo has wrestled Dracula and fought Martians and it built a time machine. If he goes to the cops, they might have a little credence for his words.
Do you remember that time with the wax museum? It's like this, but with an old woman.
Exactly. Whatever.
So, yeah. A lot of the dubs, they keep the accent sounding like, I think these might be Mexican.
The guy they got doing Santo is actually really good. I mean, for a extremely low budget, dub.
His dub is matching the energy that Santo is presenting on screen.
That kind of low-key, authoritative gruff.
And actually, I think whoever dubbed Naples got a good feel for his kind of more peppy, I'm really here for this spirit.
He felt very goofy and light without crossing that, oh, shut the fuck up line.
Yeah. It kind of disappoints me this is the only movie that Naples did with Santo. He only did like this and one other movie.
So you got a final thought, Jeff?
This is not the movie you show someone first if you want to get them interested in Santo movies.
Of the 4 we're doing this month, this was the weakest of the bunch, but I don't feel my time was wasted. I think it was still fun enough and engaging enough.
Right. So, as I said, I showed this to my Twitch audience, and it was the second one we watched, because first we watched Santo and Blue Demon versus Dracula and Wolfman. But what my audience did say at the end was this was fun.
You can't get stronger than that, I guess. So, all right, well, on that note, why don't we just go to next week then? Well, that's a wrap, dear viewer, for Vengeance of the Crying Woman. Next week, El Santo has to battle the evil, the sinister, the diabolical Dr. Death. Join us here for that. It will be epic, I assure you. Drop me an email. Drop them an email. Not me, them. Drop them an email. thevideonastyproject@gmail.com is the address. And until next week, keep your mask on.
Were you by any chance in a scrap with El Santo?
Yes.
Take that!